Welcome back to our channel. Before we begin, please like, share, and subscribe for more videos. Today, we're diving into a huge topic, Industrial Revolution. Lesson 2. Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was one of the biggest turning points in human history. It was a time when people began to use machines instead of hand tools or animal power to make goods. This brought huge changes in how people worked, traveled, and lived their daily lives. The revolution began in Britain in the period between 1750 and 1850 and marked a shift from farming and handmade goods to factory and machine production. Before this period, most people were farmers or worked in small workshops, making everything by hand. But during the Industrial Revolution, many people left their villages and moved to towns and cities to work in large factories filled with powerful machines. The Industrial Revolution marked the start of industrial capitalism. Industrial capitalism began during the Industrial Revolution when factory owners, called industrial capitalists, invested their money in machines, technology, and workers to make products on a large scale. In this system, the means of production such as factories, tools, and raw materials are privately owned, and workers sell their labor for wages. The main goal of industrial capitalism is to make profit through mass production, efficiency, and competition in the market. The Industrial Revolution was not something that happened overnight, but a slow process that began many years earlier, as the old feudal system started to decline. By 1850, Britain had become a fully industrialized nation with advanced technology, a strong economy, and a new way of organizing work. This transformation later spread to Europe, America, and the rest of the world. Early developments and causes. The Industrial Revolution became possible because of earlier progress in farming, trade, and simple technology. During the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, farmers began to use better tools, and trade networks connected different parts of the world. Machines such as spinning wheels and watermills increased productivity. Over time, these small workshops grew bigger and became more organized. But the real change started in the late 1700s when machines and steam power began to replace human and animal energy. The factory system. Before the Industrial Revolution, goods were made under the putting-out system. The putting-out system, also called the domestic system or cottage industry, was an early form of production that existed before the Industrial Revolution. In putting-out system, merchants gave raw materials, like wool or cotton, to workers who made finished goods in their own homes using simple tools. After finishing, the workers returned the products to the merchants, who then sold them in markets. It was called putting out because merchants put out materials to workers and collected the finished goods later. This process was slow and inefficient. The new factory system changed everything. In factories, workers were brought together under one roof, and machines did most of the work. The factory owners, called industrial capitalists, owned the machines, tools, and raw materials. Workers only had their labor, which they sold for wages. Factories made it possible to produce goods faster, in larger quantities, and at lower costs. Items like clothes, tools, and metal products became cheaper and easier to find. The factory owners became very rich, while many workers suffered from long working hours, poor housing, and low pay. By 1850, factories had spread all across Britain, especially in areas like Lancashire, where the cotton industry was strongest. Inventions and steam power. One of the key features of the Industrial Revolution was the invention of new machines and the use of new sources of energy. Before this, industries mostly relied on water power from rivers or wind. These energy sources were limited and often unreliable. The invention of the steam engine changed everything. The heat to generate steam came from burning coal, which in Britain was cheap and abundant. The first commercially viable steam engine was constructed by Thomas Newcomen around 1705 to 1709, but it could only be used for pumping water, mainly in mining. James Watt, in 1783 to 1784, improved the steam engine, making it more powerful and more economical in its use of fuel. What's design was adapted to operate machinery in factories. From the 1780s onward, more and more factories adopted steam power, which allowed industries to expand rapidly. Steam power was also applied to land transport in the form of railways. The first modern railway was operated entirely by steam locomotives and carried both passengers and goods. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway, opened in 1830, became the first modern railway, and by 1850, a network of railways connected all major cities in Britain. This revolution in energy and transport made it possible to move raw materials and finished goods faster and cheaper, linking factories, towns, and ports more efficiently than ever before. Economic and social changes of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution brought deep social and economic changes. Before it, most people lived in villages and worked on farms. As machines made farming faster and easier, fewer workers were needed in agriculture, and many people moved to cities to work in factories, a process known as urbanization. New industrial cities such as Manchester and Birmingham grew quickly. However, the rapid growth of cities created problems. Poor housing, lack of clean water, and long working hours made life difficult for workers. Many families, including women and children, worked under harsh conditions in factories and mines. Despite this, populations grew quickly because food was more available and industrial economies offered more jobs. Economically, Britain became the world's leading industrial power. Mass production made goods cheaper, created more trade, and increased profits for factory owners. But it also created new problems. Factories sometimes produced more goods than people could buy, leading to overproduction and economic recessions. Changes in class structure. The Industrial Revolution also changed the structure of society. A new social class, the industrial bourgeoisie, factory owners, merchants, and bankers, became rich and powerful. They replaced the old land-owning nobles as the top class. On the other hand, a large working class, or proletariat, developed. These were the men, women, and children who worked for low wages in factories and lived in crowded neighborhoods. The difference between the rich and the poor grew wider. Over time, workers began to organize themselves into labor unions to fight for better pay and working conditions. These struggles led to new political and economic ideas such as socialism. One of the main thinkers of this movement, Karl Marx, believed that capitalism exploited workers. He argued that the value created by workers' labor, called surplus value, went mostly to the owners. Marx predicted that this unfair system would one day lead to a social revolution and a more equal, socialist society. Global impact of the Industrial Revolution and imperialism. The Industrial Revolution did not just change Britain, it reshaped the world. Industrialized countries like Britain, France, Germany, and later the United States became very powerful. Their advanced technology and industries gave them strong armies and navies. This power allowed them to dominate non-industrial countries and seek colonies abroad. European countries looked to Africa and Asia for raw materials like cotton, coal, and rubber, and for markets to sell their goods. Steamships, railways, and telegraphs helped them explore and control faraway lands more easily. By the late 19th century, industrialization had created a global capitalist economy controlled by a few powerful Western nations. At the same time, industrial progress encouraged science, education, and new inventions. Technologies like electricity, the telegraph, and later the telephone transformed communication. Education improved, literacy rates increased, and societies began to value knowledge and progress more than ever before. In summary, the Industrial Revolution was a major period of change that began in Britain around 1750 and spread across the world. It marked the move from handwork to machine-based production, leading to rapid growth in industry, population, and cities. Machines like the steam engine and the rise of factories made production faster and cheaper, transforming how people lived and worked. Socially, it created two new classes, the wealthy industrialists and the poor working class, and brought both progress and hardship. Economically, it made Britain and other countries rich and powerful, but also created inequality and new forms of exploitation. The revolution led to urbanization, modern technology, and eventually imperialism, as industrialized countries expanded their power globally. Culturally and intellectually, it encouraged science, innovation, and education, setting the foundation for the modern world. Despite its problems, the Industrial Revolution remains one of the most transformative periods in human history, showing how human creativity and technology can reshape societies and change the course of civilization forever. Review questions 1. What was the Industrial Revolution and when did it begin? Answer. The Industrial Revolution was a period of great change when people began using machines instead of hand tools or animal power to make goods. It started in Britain around 1750 and continued until about 1850, marking the move from farming to factory production. 2. What was the main source of power used during the Industrial Revolution? Answer. The main source of power was steam, produced by burning coal. The improved steam engine, invented by James Watt in 1783 to 1784, made it possible to run machines in factories and move trains and ships faster. 3. What is the difference between the putting out system and the factory system? Answer. In the putting out system, people made goods at home by hand, and production was slow. In the factory system, many workers worked together in one building using machines, allowing mass production that was faster and cheaper. 4. How did the Industrial Revolution change people's lives? Answer. The Industrial Revolution made many people move from villages to cities to work in factories. It created urbanization, brought new jobs, and improved transportation, but also caused poor housing, low wages, and bad working conditions for many workers. 5. What was the role of steam power in transportation? Answer. Steam power revolutionized transportation. It was used in railways and steamships. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway, opened in 1830, was the first modern railway. By 1850, railways connected all major cities in Britain, and steamships made global trade faster and more efficient. 6. What new social classes emerged during the Industrial Revolution? Answer. Two main classes emerged. The industrial bourgeoisie, who owned factories, banks, and machines, and became rich. The working class, who worked for wages in difficult conditions. This class difference led to social movements and the rise of socialism, which aimed to create fairness between workers and owners. 7. What global effects did the Industrial Revolution have? Answer. The Industrial Revolution made countries like Britain, France, and Germany powerful. They began colonizing Africa and Asia to get raw materials and markets for their goods. This led to imperialism and the creation of a global capitalist economy, connecting all parts of the world through trade and technology. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more videos.